I have been waiting for this day since I joined the Algorand Foundation as CEO. I want to, I do want to give a shout out to the marketing team at the foundation. And I said this on our assembly before, but let me just say it again. When I started, we did not have a particularly good marketing, and a lot of that came from the fact that we didn't put any resources behind it and then really any attention to it. And I think, and I've said this a number of times, I think the biggest mistake that we made was to say, we have the best tech in crypto. Surely everybody will recognize this. I mean, the quality of this protocol speaks for itself. The quality of this community speaks for itself. So we just have to be there, build it, and they will come, right? We then lost our head of marketing in June. And I was interviewing and interviewing and interviewing, and I kissed a lot of frogs for this role, and a lot of very good frogs, actually, as well. And our marketing team has held it together over the summer and really operated without direction. I was kind of quasi running the marketing department, which was not good for anybody, and particularly our marketing efforts. And finally, though, and not to put sort of any undue pressure on you, Jess, because the world is not going to change in a day. We're not going to spend on a dime. She's got a lot of work to do. This is the beginning of this process of understanding, what this community needs, how we're going to position this protocol, what we're going to do. But I am beyond thrilled to announce the onboarding of our Chief Marketing Officer, Jess Chin. So I want to just start by saying that you worked at Nike first, and then we did have an announcement strategy, which was that I was going to say Nike on one day, and then I was going to say Apple, and then I was going to say WhatsApp, and it was going to be like a 3-part thing. But the Nike thing, and if I thought about it for 5 seconds, of course, I should have realized everybody started thinking we had this Nike partnership. So that was not a very good move. But this is why we have a head of marketing now, to make sure that I don't do these knuckleheaded things going forward. But you come from very hardcore Silicon Valley and also some very hardcore brands, right? Like 3 of the best known brands in this country are Nike, Apple, and Meta, Facebook, right? I mean, you just couldn't come with any better credentials, and your credentials, and you are worthy of the quality of this community and the quality of this protocol. And so can everybody do a little clap thing to welcome you first on this Twitter space? A little, everybody with the clap emojis, please, on this space. Thank you. And Jess, why don't I just turn it over to you and tell us a little bit about yourself without talking about Algorand. Just give us a little bit of background on you so that we can know you a little bit more as a person.
Yeah, no, so glad. Thank you guys so much for this warm welcome. I'm so excited to be part of this community. I'm so excited for the amazing impact that we're going to have. We already have, but also the amazing adventure we're going to be on. But yeah, I can speak a little bit about myself, and I'm really looking forward to getting to know folks here as well. My background, I did start out in Silicon Valley. I was at Apple, actually right after the iPhone launched. Actually, I have some fun, amazing stories of Steve Jobs and some interactions there, but I won't divulge for now. But really, my beginnings really was starting out really thinking about the consumer experience, and especially in the retail space. So I actually helped launch a lot of their retail expansion as well as online efforts in Asia. So I was actually in Shanghai for a few years. Really leading some strategic initiatives on behalf of the company, and had just an amazing time. I also worked really thoughtfully in headquarters, also thinking about internal enterprise level strategic projects, and it was an amazing time. I think for myself, though, I really wanted to pivot heavy into brand marketing because I felt like really wanting to be closer to the consumer and really thinking about how do we tap into actually on the ground communities, and also personally as an athlete, I play basketball. I'm also very into running, into a lot of running communities. My dream brand, I'll be honest, has always been Nike, and being able to work there was honestly an amazing experience. So my focus there really was on building these digital communities across, starting in football. So I actually started out in leading the World Cup campaign in 2018, partnered with a lot of athletes and influencers, Neymar, Ronaldo, as well as really thinking about like these on the ground communities, these we call them fixer communities of football athletes, football obsessed teens, as well as those who are really just like absolute fandoms of Nike, our products. And so from there, really built out a full global ecosystem of runners, of athletes, of you can call them retail users as well, of our products, and really developed a really powerful, actually it's a revenue sharing model around our jerseys and tied to the World Cup campaign. So it was fabulous experience. Moved then into really more of a strategy role, thinking about how do we change our campaign model, which was very heavy campaign, into more digital marketing. And so we built a 200-person team across the world, really thinking about how to decentralize our content efforts. And then from there, did a bit more fun work around culture and sneaker drops. I can speak more on that in the future. And then really ended up pivoting, moving back to the Bay, back into tech, where I joined WhatsApp. At the time, it was as an entire company, it was called Facebook, which is now Meta. And I was leading privacy and brand marketing efforts at WhatsApp. So we were building a brand. So prior to that, it was a product that was loved and used by over 2.5 billion users. But there was a huge opportunity to actually define what WhatsApp stood for, and also really establish a clear, differentiated brand. And so from there, built that strategy, rolled it out. Also had a team that really rolled out some amazing global campaigns around the world, as well as across social. And yeah, that's kind of I have a lot more stories, but I'll just leave it at that for now.
Okay, but you started at Apple though, so maybe talk a little bit about that, and then you ran in your first encounter with Steve Jobs. I think is maybe worth telling.
We can go into that. I mean, my role at Apple, I think, really was at the time creating demand in developing markets. So when you think about, specifically in Asia, and so thinking a lot about the consumer journey. So what are the main touch points that our consumer touches, and really what are the main messages and also experiences that would really create loyalty beyond reason for the Apple consumer, since we were so new in Asia at the time. And again, the iPhone had so many more local competitors, and how we really brought that to life. So that was a really fun time. My encounters with Steve Jobs, I have two. I'm going to share one of them. I had worked on a lot of enterprise level solutions back in the home base, and basically we had come up with this like amazing strategy and also built out a UX called the iBuy. I'm not going to go into detail what it was, but basically I was presenting to our CFO, Peter Oppenheimer at the time, and Steve Jobs walks in. I think he was walking in for some other he was not coming in for the meeting. He walks in, and then he just starts like asking a bajillion questions. What is iBuy? Like, tell me about this, tell me about that. And it was just, it was like terrifying, but also an amazing opportunity, I guess, to not sell him, but like basically share with him a really powerful concept of how we can enable like procurement and different things across the organization and beyond. So it was a good time. It was a good time. It was a while ago, so I won't go into detail.
Yeah, trial by fire, though, for sure. And so I think you were not looking for a job. No. I think it's fair to say you had a very good, you're at a top company, and you had a wide remit, and we, thanks to Jason Lee, who you knew socially and professionally, yeah. You kind of came to us, and I, of course, was so excited, when I met you. But what kind of, what attracted you to Algorand, and how were you, maybe starting with, to what extent were you even thinking about Web3, right, yeah. per se, and what about layer ones, and what about Algorand in particular, and just, you were happy, and so what happened?
Yeah, I will say I was not looking. This definitely came to me. I will say I've been following Algorand for some time, though, so just to be clear. Jason and I have been friends for years, and very, very like good friends. And so just learning and hearing about his own journey and also the journey that Algorand's been on has definitely been something I've been following closely. Now Web3 in general, I think Meta had also done its own exploration in that space. And I've always been passionate and very thoughtful about just digital ownership, how it applies to privacy. That was part of my role at Meta. Also thinking about digital identity, accessibility, which was also a big part of my role, and also thinking about the metaverse. And so that drew me to the sector as a whole. So I've definitely been kind of following and having a lot of thinking around what felt like an inevitable growth of the tech side of Web3. And I've also had a lot of Web3 friends, so people who are in it. And so I was just kind of following on both as a consumer, as a buyer, and then also just as a friend. And so I will say, yes, I was not thinking of diving in at that exact time. I think when you and I chatted, and I was thinking of referring a good few, like some of my really amazing network over for this role. But I will say, after meeting some more folks, I ended up meeting a lot of the team, met some folks just in the Algorand ecosystem. I really felt like it felt like in some ways WhatsApp in the early days, where there was this amazing product, and also huge impact. And I personally, I am so passionate about equity and inclusion when it comes to a financial access perspective, and just the stories that were being told, disaster relief, you name it. I think it drew me, and also the tech drew me. I've worked again, like Apple, like best in class WhatsApp, Meta, but best in class tech. Just not enough storytelling and human-centered differentiation as a brand. I was like, it just felt like a lot of upside and opportunity. And so took me a long time. I will say, Stacey, I don't know if you courted me for about like 2, 3, 4 months. That I've just been thinking and reflecting a lot about what I wanted to do in this next chapter. And it felt meaningful enough to take a leap.
Yeah, I mean, I'm very proud of myself for doing this, I must say. And can I maybe, and we have a bunch of community questions that were given us, so I want to make sure that we give, some time to that. But maybe if I can kind of marry the two questions together. And you've just arrived, so I want to be, I'm not expecting anything, fully fleshed out, right? But yeah. Your experience at these huge companies that everybody knows the names of these companies, everybody understands those brands. What can you say maybe that you take from those experiences that you can apply to Algorand and to our situation, and even in just kind of broad strokes? How do you think about kind of applying that skill set and those learnings to what the situation that we face right now as a protocol?
Yeah, I definitely think this is like, there's so much, and I know that Web3 marketing fundamentally, there's so many differences. And I know that was one of the community questions that were asked, and I'm really happy to dive into that as well. But I will say that just the practice of marketing, there are some truths that I think can be very much applied. So things like the fact that I think when I first joined, I got a lot of questions around like, why Algorand, and also like what's the difference of like Algorand versus all the other layer ones? Aren't they all like fast, green, etc.? And the fact that there hasn't been a really strong narrative and story of Algorand superiority, as well as a clear, differentiated, and inspiring brand. I just don't feel like there's been any real Web3 brands that have emerged in a way that's like extraordinarily meaningful to the community, but also to draw in mass audiences. I think that is something that I have done in terms of really building out what are the true tenants, as well as how does the brand come to life across all channels, across all touch points, in a way that really starts sticking to people's brains, and really driving that like number one mind share and attribution. And so that's one thing I feel like there's a huge opportunity for. I would say my experience in with Nike and really driving like culture conversation, like making sure we're part of that zeitgeist, and adding a bit of a cool, I don't know if it's a cool factor, but kind of bringing us to be much more relevant to the younger generation, which I think is really important in this space. And so much of Web3 is built by Gen Z and beyond. And so I think there's a lot of opportunity to be part of the culture, part of the conversation, both from a social perspective, but also having a point of view of what does Algorand have to say around topics that matter, whether that be whether that could be around equity and finance, like whether it be around AI, whether it be around refugees. I mean, you name it. Like there's so much conversation that is being had without Algorand being tapped. And so I feel like there's a lot of culture work that I could bring in. And then finally, just like strategic audience building. I've done that. My last role at Meta was also really thinking about what are the key audiences, what narratives are we going to drive, and then also really driving adoption and acquisition across those audiences. So you can think devs, retail users, etc. How we really, really bring them into the ecosystem.
And then let me ask you one more before I'll give it to Fred to tee up some of the community questions. But you taught me a word called performance marketing, and a lot of what you've talked about so far is kind of. Well, I guess the question is, how do you think you're very analytical as well? And you like to, we've had a lot of community feedback about both the fact that we're not doing enough marketing and also that we're wasting money doing marketing that doesn't have any impact, right?
Yep.
And you come from a very hardcore Silicon Valley approach to getting the ROI on marketing. Do you want to just tell us a little bit about your view of the world there and how you're going to whip us into shape and make sure we're doing this properly?
Yeah, I will say that analytics, return on investment, be able to ruthlessly prioritize is extraordinarily important to me, especially in the current environment that we're in. I think every dollar needs to work a lot harder. And I'm not docking any of the past work at all, but I just think there is a reality where there is some pivots to be made around prior spend and really how we are so much more intentional, thoughtful, and making sure our dollar goes a lot farther for us. And so when I think about what is that goal that I'm looking to drive, I think driving double-digit growth of users, of active users, especially on like existing dApps and projects, transactions on chain through really effective audience-centered marketing, shifting perception, and really being able to track and actually see movement. And also, of course, doing that in conjunction with the community is something I am very, very excited about. And so I think that's something around SEO, targeted paid ads, really being able to measure our investment and seeing short-term and long-term impact is something I'm really excited about.
Okay, so the amazing Fred Estante, who is everywhere at all times, in all instances, in a way that only he can do. You have been collecting some community questions, and so why don't you start asking them?
Absolutely. Thanks, Stacy. I'm going to ask a few questions and I'm going to send Jess right back to you. Hi, Jess. Our community is super excited to have you in the Algorand, and they've already sent loads and loads of questions. We have selected just a few for us to cover today in this very first Twitter Spaces. So the very first question is, what will be the CMO's responsibilities? Is this about commercial partnerships or retail adoption? If either of those, what does that involve? Advertising?
Yes, and this is a fabulous question. I definitely will dig in. I definitely want to say also that this is a evolving role, right? And so as I learn more and as I listen more to the community, right, I'm also just want to share that I'll be going on a listening tour. I'm really excited to learn and also evolve as we see fit. So I'm going to share as of now what my top 4 priorities are, and also my overarching kind of perspective on the responsibilities of the CMO role. So first, I think fundamentally the goal is to make Algorand famous and ubiquitous, right? So we'll be driving further distinction and differentiation, really positioning our ecosystem to target developers, retail, institutional investors as the world's most secure and reliable L1 blockchain. And so my top 4 priorities and to achieve that, 1 will be really building a clear, differentiated, and inspiring brand. 2 will be driving global recognition of Algorand superiority. So you can think PR, comms, really being moving up in terms of just rankings. The 3rd is growing awareness of useful dApps as well as projects. And then 4 is to really accelerate adoption of key audiences, which is what Stacey and I were just chatting about.
That is fantastic. Thank you, Jess. Alrighty, on to question 2 from user Real Value Vision, aka Moonboy. Which marketing strategies will get utilized and who is the target group? What will be the main focus of the new CMO in regards to marketing, and why did you choose to work with Algorand?
I got to say, these questions, I will say, these questions are so spot on. I'm like, this community clearly understands base level marketing in a way that is fantastic. So I'm really looking forward to listen and learn more, and kind of hear also from you guys, like what you've seen in terms of target groups and how you think about it. I'll share my perspective for now. And so I think when I think about target groups by priority, I think first devs with a focus on acquisition. And so for me, I think there's some key markets that we can think about there. A very light example would be like India. I think is something we've been doing some really amazing work in. And then of course retail users, right, with a focus on acquisition and retention for our existing dApps, and then thinking about how we also partner with investors and traders. And I think the strategies to reach them. I think of, again, we've been largely doing a lot of expensive partnerships and some PR. And I think when I think about how we can move more to just really a tighter growth, like really focused on growth and adding these marketing capabilities, I think about one is like going on the offense, right? So how can we really position ourselves to always be that reference point when someone thinks about some of the a major player, another L1 protocol, right? So how can we immediately drive them to think about Algorand? And so I always give this example, but when I was at WhatsApp, you may have heard of, we just started hearing about this tiny chat messaging app. It was called, you might have heard of it. It's called Telegram. And it felt like at the time it was super small, not a big deal. But then it kept growing. And WhatsApp, like at WhatsApp, it started becoming like a real issue because, we were really trying to land this like really strong privacy story, user focused story. But Telegram, what they did was ultimately they always positioned themselves, Signal as well, position themselves right at the standpoint right next to, as a competitor next to WhatsApp, because WhatsApp was the big player. Telegram was constantly punching up. And because of that, people just immediately started equating Telegram with WhatsApp, and it was so top of mind. And so I don't think we'll do the exact same thing, given technologically, again, Telegram's not as strong, but I think as an analogy, that idea of like a on the ground guerrilla campaign, I felt like they did some really amazing work there. So just something to keep in mind as we think about how do we move Algorand to be truly top of mind. I think leading with innovation. So go on the offense, lead with innovation. How do we communicate both our existing products and projects and also future offerings more clearly across the board? And then of course, finally, is to demonstrate our commitment to devs and founders, right? I know that devs hate being marketed to. And so how do we think about really showing our commitment through like dev tooling, education, support, and really think about all the touch points to really speak to them where they are and really provide actual utility and value. So those are some of the things I think about.
Thank you very much, Jess. All righty, the third question comes from Yodelin, aka Mingo, and he asks, why do you think Web2 brands consistently get Web3 campaigns wrong?
Okay. I'm going to keep this one really simple. I think we get a lot of things wrong, but I'm just going to list two for now. One, devs, I think devs hate marketing. And so I think a lot of Web2 brands try to use conventional advertising in order to reach them, and I don't think it's worked. Secondly, I noticed that a lot of Web2 brands do a lot of like one-way broadcast marketing. So it's just like shouting from the rooftops about the brand, and then not tapping into actual community and culture, and really giving your toolkit, handing your brand over to the community, and also establishing really meaningful relationships. I feel like in so many ways, relationship needs to be the root, and therefore global movement becomes the fruit. And in so many ways, I think that's one thing that I think our Web2 brands are not doing right.
Thanks. The next question is there a marketing strategy from another blockchain or foundation that you think has been successful?
So I think we have to define what success means. I think if we define success as being able to kind of show like being top of mind in a mainstream media perspective due to like big fancy partnerships, I do think that in terms of mainstream partnerships, Polygon has done a solid job. and moving mainstream media to think of Polygon through some of the partnerships, obviously Starbucks, Disney, etc. But in my opinion, I think there's a huge gap because I think a lot of the partnerships they've leveraged have not been truly need-based, real solution-based on-chain solutions, where they're actually bringing their business on-chain in a really meaningful way that solves real problems at scale. So it fits one bucket of success. And then another bucket of success is community development. I think Algorand's done an amazing job, but I think Cardano has done a really solid job in terms of developing community and really building that out and building advocates, like real big advocates for the ecosystem. And I think a lot of that, Charles has done an amazing job. And I really respect that. But now I think as we come to Algorand, we'll have to think a lot more about, how do we amplify John, Stacy, Paul, etc., the amazing bench that we have to really, and also amplify the amazing community that is here and actually give them the tools they need to do the job of really driving more advocacy for the ecosystem.
This is music to our ears, Jess. Thank you. All right, fifth question. With many fast, green proof-of-stake blockchains available, how do you market Algorand as different?
So again, new to the role. I want to hear, and I want people to know that this brand building exercise of really defining Algorand is going to be a community exercise. And so definitely want to hear from everyone here around like what actually makes us different. I will give my own take for now from what I've observed. I think a lot of blockchains are doing a lot of smoke and mirrors. I think ultimately we do have superior tech. We have faster finality, we have true scalability and true carbon efficiency, right, across the board. I think we need to play from a position of strength. We need to double down on areas that we are ahead. And so fundamentally, if the world is best served with the Algorand technology in our ecosystem, and we really do believe that we are driven by this mission to make financial realities accessible to everyone, we need to create deeper emotional connections to create loyalty beyond reason with our numerous audiences, with our brand, and ensure that Algorand is really grown to be a technological force, to be known and recognized. And that's going to take a lot of focused investment and strong execution. So for me, at least for now, when I think about like the 4 top proof points, 1, security. So this idea that we have the most private and secure chain. I mean, we have things like quantum security, and like there's so much that only Algorand, we can actually say only Algorand has as a proof point. Reliability, no downtime ever. Service, which I know is something John had been talking about, this idea of like world-class concierge service, and then finally scale, ensuring access and equity to all. And so I think those are things that, again, we'll have to continue to build out. But I think a lot of it, I would love to hear more from the community of what really makes us different.
Fantastic. Thanks, Jess. All right, and on to the last question for today. Why did you decide to take the jump into Web3?
So I think I spoke on this with Stacey. So I'll keep it short. Basically, a lot of Web3 friends, and really believing that from a privacy standpoint, and also a data standpoint, I just really think that we need to move to a place where ownership is given to the hands of the people. And I believe that this sector is the one that's actually the one who's going to be on the leading edge of that change. So I'm really excited to be here.
So thanks, Fred. Nice job, and thanks, community. And there's a ton of more questions, but this is not going to be, of course, the last time that Jess engages with you. And Fred will set up maybe some Reddit Q&As as well, and more Twitter space. And we'll invite you to our next assembly. And this is, as you know, one of our resolutions this year is that we're just like out there, engaged with you on all kinds of touch points all year long. But pretty exciting stuff, right? I mean, does she know what she's talking about, or does she know what she's talking about?